Hello, St. Thomas Academy, and welcome to the Cadet Football Show. I'm your host, Mike Maxwell, and to my left is head football coach Travis Walch. Welcome back, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. So, Coach, a tough way to start the season, and of course your tenure here at STA. A 59-29 loss to an Andover squad that was well seasoned. A team that actually looked mid-season, maybe even end of season prepared. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up because I remember walking off the field right after warm-ups and talking to Coach Z, and I said, "Hey, do you remember your first night?" He goes, "Yeah, I did." Before the game, he goes, "Yeah, I did," and it didn't go well, and we didn't have a lot of time to elaborate. It's certainly not what we wanted it to be. We wanted to put on a good performance, and it's tough when you come out of the gates and you're down 17-0. If I were to look back and say, how could I have done a better job? Frankly, from the start, I would have said, continue to tell our coordinators, just stay on track. 17-0 in the first 6 minutes is doable. I felt like we started to reach a little bit. And I know we'll talk more about it, but no, not the start. Not the start I would have ever dreamed of or thought of or wanted. But like everything, we got to move on and we got to worry about what's going to happen next. And but certainly it's worth talking about some of these things throughout that were good for us, and then things that weren't so good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously a bit of an eye opener for the boys. In the last the 14 years I've been here, I can only think of one game where we got manhandled like we did, and that was a very well-coached Joliet Catholic school that came in here and dismantled us pretty good.
I watched that game in the off-season, and that was a different beast athletically as well, not just scheme.
Yeah. Coach Z probably has some
absolutely
memories of that one. So did you expect that kind of firepower from this Andover team?
I expected them to be who they were.
Okay.
I expected us to be better prepared for who they were, if that's the best way I can put that. There were some things that showed up early when we just talk about the little things we want to do on offense. When you look at our yards per play, it wasn't bad, but we could not string them together. And we talk about a lot, getting a first down in a drive opens the door to a lot of things. One, it forces their defense to have to play and expend energy more than three in a row. But two, it allows us to see formations early in games to figure out where their liabilities are. And when you're 3 and out and you can't get that first down, it becomes tougher. And so that would be the one thing on offense, say we need to do a better job of getting to play 4, 5, and 6 on a given drive. Even if that given drive doesn't end in a touchdown, doesn't matter. That's 3 more formations and plays we got out there to get a better feel for how are they going to adjust to that. So I thought that really hurt us early. Defensively early, they came out with some stuff that we hadn't seen a lot of. And at some point in defense, you have to say, listen, we think this is the way they want to beat us. We did not think unbalanced 4-by-1 and occasionally 5-by-0 was the way they wanted to win. And there was really nothing that they saw in film and scrimmage that would have dictated that. Now, what I'm going to be curious to do as a coach is say next week, when they go down and play Mankato West, is that who they evolve to because they have different personnel? And I said this last week on film. Game 1 is always a tough one in saying, who are they going to be relative to who they were last year? Right. Now, at least, we're going to see a full game of Waconia and go, okay, what they did last year is matching up with what they did this year? Right. Or it's not. There's some real wrinkles based on the personnel that they have. And I think good coaching staffs are always going to have to change and flux every year a little bit.
Yep, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the game itself. Offensively, we seemed a little bit off. Maximus, 9 for 28, 135 yards. The 135 yards seems to be within what we would normally expect, but 9 to 28 was kind of off. A couple of interceptions in there. He was actually throwing a really good ball in my estimation, just a bit out of the reach of the receivers. Furthermore, the O-line seemed to be unable to create that space that Savion in particular, that's all he needs, right? He just needs a crack. And then flip into the other side of the ball. Defensively, we seem to be out of position and confused about assignments. And you may have talked about that a little bit already. They came out with some different things that you weren't expecting or that you hadn't seen on film. So I guess the question is, in a long-winded way here, was that a function of Andover throwing us off, or were we just not fully prepared to
I think it's
be in
both.
The game? Okay.
I mean, honestly, I have to go back and say, were our guys in the best position with the stuff that we worked on? Are we doing too much where our kids, specifically on defense, we always say, can you align right? Do you know your run fit and your pass fit? Okay. And if we can't start with that, then how are we going to be a really good reactive defense on where we have to go? The more you have to think about those things, the longer it's going to take you to react to a play. So defensively, you come back and you say, how do we simplify so we can clear some minds? We got to be able to align right and clearly understand what our run fit and what our pass fit are. Offensively is a little different thing. If you look at it and say, well, per rush, save was fine. If we can be at that, we're going to be fine. Yep. And against a good team, that's what one thing I've talked to say about in our running backs is we have to understand, I was running back. You get 30 carries. 14 of those might be 1-yard carries. Sure. 30% of those might be 4 to 5. Can 10% of those be the chunk yardage, right? So being able to stay within yourself and go, we need to understand that it's not all going to happen in a home run. Right. So I was actually fairly happy with the run game. If you ask me, where were we deficient is we put ourselves in a situation early, and again, this is my fault. We shouldn't have passed 28 times a game, okay? There is no scenario in which I'm going minus us being down early. And there's two functions to passing when you're behind. One, you're hoping to gain more yardage, and we were protecting really, really well.
I would agree with you on that.
There was very little, I don't know if Max was actually sacked in the game, so we were protecting well. But there's a whole nother layer to that. They weren't rushing 5 guys, they were playing coverage knowing what we had to. So it all balances out. There's so many more things to this that you can always say, but the other thing was this. We don't want to be a team that has to pass 28 times a game to win a game. So we had to pass to try to get more chunks, but to also keep the clock stopped.
Yeah, for sure.
If we catch it, it's probably a first down, clock stops. If we drop it and we don't complete it, clock stops. And we're really trying to lengthen the game at that point. Yeah. I just thought in hindsight, when I look back as head coach, I say, we did that too early. And had we waited until halftime and not gotten a little bit too, I guess, out of our system in the second quarter, I think the numbers would have been better reflected. And hey, Max threw some great balls that weren't caught. Max threw some balls that we would have loved to have back. But in the end, I don't look at that. I look at, did we have a system in place that put our kids in the best position to make catches and to make throws? And the answer clearly was no. And part of it is when you're down early, these guys aren't used to being down. That's a great thing around here. There's equity built in not being down. Anxiety levels rise. So do we expect to make some of those catches? Yeah, absolutely. And if you say to me, well, why didn't they happen the other night, but they've happened throughout the course of many games? I would say to you, what was the difference? You're playing a team that can put stressors on you and you're behind. Two things that we haven't seen a lot of, maybe specifically in game 1 on top of it.
Got it. And I will tell you, one of the things that we talked about on the broadcast, Joe Moore was asking me as a coach, what do I do? You're down 17-0, and my answer is just take a breath and stick to the game plan. Right?
Stay within the plan.
And that's great. Not that I'm this coaching expert, but that to me is when you're got those stressors in there. You just got to take a breath.
When you really have to
line up and play.
Yeah, when you really have to change your game plans, you start looking at the board and going, okay, we need 3 scores and we only have 3 drives left. Now our plan might have to change. So again, something I should have been able to dictate better to our coaches earlier in that game to just stay with it. And we did have, 17-0. We got to 17-7. At that point, I'm going, it's not where I want to be. But I felt good at that point. Sure. And I thought we were going to be able to settle down at that point. It didn't happen. And I have a lot of, I told Coach after the game, I look at where you guys are at, Andover, Coach, and I said from a football perspective, it was impressive to watch. They knew who they were, they knew how they wanted to counter, And it's a system that's been in place for 5 and 6 years.
Yep.
And we aspire to that. And I've been in 5 different programs now that we started, and I remember game ones, even at programs where we ended up winning 90% of our games. Mm-hmm. I would love to say it was a whole lot different than the other day. Mm-hmm. Score might have been different, but some of the same things we run into with communication was not.
Well, that's why you play again next week, or this week. So,
yep.
So let's just talk a little bit about. You made a decision early on to not use the full complement of summer workouts in training camp days. Although I don't think it would have changed the outcome of this game, does that come back to haunt you a little bit, at least early on in the season?
I don't think so, because the whole point of doing less in the summer is installing less and realizing that we can't just say we're taking these days just to take these days. And I've been in those scenarios at the college level. I talked to a lot of high school coaches and saying you need to understand what your install is and have enough to do to complement it. If there's any argument for the other night for me, it's we didn't put enough parameters on our game plan and we had too much. And I think you could ask any one of our coaches right now, when we all reflect and look and say, what could we have done better? We had probably 2 coverages we didn't need. And we probably had a full run scheme. And when you say, well, what's the big deal about having a full run scheme? Well, that might be 10 plays that we practiced that week that we didn't use in that same amount in a game. And we had 3 pass schemes we might not have even run in the game. So you instantly have to look back and go, is our problem that we didn't have enough time together, or did we not? Every guy wants to say, well, what if I need this one extra play? That is 4 plays or 5 plays within a given week. Let's say we only have 40 in a given week to even run to prepare for a team. Right. So no, I am not worried about that. And I'm never going to judge our program or our coaching staff on what other people are doing. We have to understand, I know it's different now, but in years where there were full 2-a-days and no summer practices, kids were not training all summer. They were not playing sports all summer. Yep. It's different. And I'm going to hold true to my philosophies, whether we win or lose. It doesn't mean we're not going to look critically at ourselves. We spent a lot of time over the weekend saying, as coaches, how do we get better? Yep. And if we go this whole year and we think the reason we didn't play well against Andover was we didn't have 2 more practices in the summer, we'll make that change as a group. I don't believe those 2 are correlated right now. But I'm the first one, if we look back and say, maybe it was. Maybe this is a consistent thing that continues to show up and we're not prepared. I think we had too much. And I think that's something that every coordinator at some point has to be able to say, how do we limit that? And how do we clear our minds, the minds of our guys? And hey, I'm a first-time head coach. Luke was a first-time coordinator calling it. Sam was a first-time coordinator calling it here at this school. We're gonna need a little bit of a grace period too, and no one wants to hear that, but we're first timers.
No, it will get better. So, great. So let's talk about a few positives. At least let's start on the defensive side. Hank Stevican, 9 tackles. Teddy Knapp, Charlie Probst, Charlie Kern, each with 7 tackles. Those were some great highlights for me. And of course, Savion, 21 carries, 164 yards. 4 TDs, including a beautiful 80-yard touchdown run. I still can't believe he stayed in bounds, but fun to watch. Let's talk a little bit about the MVPs of the game.
Okay.
Offense.
So offense was Savion, and as I told the team yesterday, I think if we're going to grow and be who we want to be, little things that Say is doing better when you watch him as a running back. He's putting the ball in the right hand. And I know that seems so simple, but when you say impressive run, what was really impressive about it, he was using his off arm because he had the ball in the correct arm. Yep. So you have your off arm to use, and he broke 2 tackles using an off arm. And when people say, well, why are we fumbling the ball? I usually start with, is it in the proper hand? Because if the ball's in this hand, it exposes it to the defense. If you're the defense, we don't have our off arm to use to protect you and the ball. So it goes really deep. But what I told the team was is certainly the expectation is, he's going to have those runs. Yep. He's going to get his carries. I think he ended up with 28 touches. And as I told him, in a perfect world, I'd love 20 to 21 of them to be on the ground, but catch the ball 3 times, get a couple returns in, and that's how you can affect the game. Where he is different. He has totally bought in, and he has become a leader. He's not questioning, coach, why am I not getting the ball? He's saying, how can I affect the game in different ways?
For sure.
And when I look at him and go, what was most impressive about him the other night? We all want to look at the O-line and the way we protect. Watch some of the blocking that he did to protect Max Sims.
Yep.
And that is what I'm so impressed about. And I tell him, I go, you want to get looked at certain levels. They want to see complete backs. They just don't want to see a guy that can carry the ball and run. So really proud of him on that. I go back to the tackles that you mentioned. We better have 7, 8, 9 tackles if we're on the field 80-some plays. Right. I would say overall, we still under-tackled. I mean, there were still too many missed tackles.
For sure.
So when you look at that, I'd say those numbers with the amount of plays we went, we probably want to be up in that 13, 14, 15. Okay. But I will also say you need to be able to spread those tackles out. We can't have one guy with 22 tackles. I really get concerned about the defense when that's happening. So I love the fact that we spread the wealth in it. I had run into an alum of the school and a former coach here, Coach Flynn, the other night. And he said, I watched the whole game on my iPhone. And he just said, I loved the effort. No matter the score, the kids ran, they competed, and that's got to be our number one goal. Now, if we have 3 of those games, it becomes really challenging to continue to get the kids. But I will say, that is what's most important right now. We will get scheme figured out, but we can't look and point and say, in a very fundamental standard, we've got to be able to run. And that's what they were doing defensively. As you look at Charlie Probst, he's a guy that we put at outside linebacker, and he can run, he can tackle, he can cover, he can do a lot of different things. And we need to get to the point where he's also a big part of our pressure game. The other ones, special teams, Declan, we didn't have a lot of special teams highlights, but he did kick and strike the ball well. That was great.
Sure did.
2 of the ones that are most important to me, and when we say these to our team, we put them in these orders. Number 1, who was Mr. Hustler, what we want to call our cadet award, and that was Chase Young. He is doing a lot of things for our team right now. He is getting as many plays per week as anyone in our system, to the point where we have to start looking at backups in both of his positions right now, tight end and quarterback, to say we need to insulate that spot right now, because if we lose what he is giving our team, not only in game but in practice, it's going to affect us in a lot of different ways. So priority always should be, who's Mr. Hustle? And that was Chase Young. And who is the scout team player of the week, and who is putting us in the position to operate the way we need to in games. And I mentioned this name last week, Patrick Fay, who's a backup lineman for us right now. He gave us a ton of really good reps, both as a 1 or as with our 1s group, and then also as a 2 to service our defense. So those are the people I think are important highlighting this week.
Yeah. Well, and Chase had a great catch and run, which I think set up the first touchdown.
It did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was awesome. And it may be cliche or backups don't like to hear this, that the scout team is as important as the starters, because they prepare the starters for what they're going to see. And if they don't do their job and put on a good front, it makes us, we're going to be less successful because of that.
It is. And there's so much more to it. We got to look long term. These are not elimination games right now. So 1, how do we be healthy in the way that we practice? 2, how do we delegate reps properly over the course of a year in the way we practice and the way we play? It's really, really tough to do. And now the challenge becomes, you got a 10th grade game on Thursday, you got a Friday night varsity game, and then you have a JV game. And how do you delegate all of those reps out and still remain healthy enough to come back on Monday and Tuesday and have a product out there that's going to look similar to what we're going to play against?
Yep.
So there are, and again, when I talk about learning process, that's all part of my learning process, is how do we relegate that to be as good as we can be when it comes elimination time. I want to win all these games now. I'm not saying that. But I want to make sure we are as healthy as we can be, and we are ready as we can be when it's time for games. And I said this clearly in weeks prior, we need to be good mid to late October and November. That is where we have got to be peaking. And again, I've talked to a lot of coaches. Do I want to be 5-3? No. Do I want to be 6-2? Not really, okay? But I'm more worried about what are we going to be in those weeks.
Agreed.
And that's what we need to build for and prep for.
A state championship with 3 losses is still a state championship, right?
Yeah, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that won't be happy about that. I can't say that all be true, because every time you lose a game, you got to be able to ask yourself, why didn't we win that game?
Yeah.
And there are clear answers to that.
Yep.
And it can't always be, oh, they were just really talented. I don't believe in that. I just don't believe it in at all. And that's don't want to be answering these questions 3 times a year.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So let's put that game behind us. Obviously, we're going to learn. You're going to learn from it. The next opponent is the Waconia Wildcats.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about some of our lower grade level teams and a little update on what's happening there. So let's start with the middle school.
So middle school, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 athletes out. We decided to split our middle school teams up. We have 2 evenly divided teams. So we worked really hard this off season. Middle school football, regionally, the classic walk out of your school doors, play middle school football, play on a Thursday. Yeah. It's really disappearing. It's really club and association up to 8th grade. And we made the decision and just said, let's make one more push, and contacted schools like Hill Murray and Benilde and said, can we all, like communities, like schools, like philosophies, can we all come together and create a schedule throughout the metro? And we were able to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 11 teams. And what we said at one point is we're going to split that. We would rather have 2 teams than one big one, an A and a B. And it was really to fit the league. We're going to be playing teams in this league that are 6th through 8th graders. And the next step is if it doesn't work this way this year, the next step becomes then we have to go association and club like everyone else. And we really wanted to stay away from that for a lot of reasons. And one of them is, do you want to be playing at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night? Do you want to be playing Saturday morning at 9 or Saturday morning at 4, wherever we can get field space? We're just trying to keep what has been the traditional approach here to that. So they will open up this week, and what happened is they both get a scheduled game within that league, is how it is.
Okay, good. Well, we'll look forward to the results of that. Yep. How about the 9th grade team? How did they do last week? 9th grade lost 14-7 at Andover. It was interesting talking to the Andover staff. They said it's their first year that they haven't had a true 9A, 9B. They literally had to cancel their 9B. So they're more in the mode of 35 to 38 kids, one team is where they're at. Okay. And we're at about probably 58 right now. And the group ended up losing 14-7. I talked to Coach Jerkovich. He said, hey, we had our opportunities. Yep. Kids played hard. The challenge for Coach Jerkovich is we got to get out now and find, we have, I think, 2 9B games scheduled. When you have 58, you want to be able to split that. Yep. And you want to be able to get both of those groups time. We are not going to split the 9th grade evenly right now. We have a 9th grade, and then our B option games are for the kids that don't get to play as much. Now, I still want 2.5, 3/4 is kind of the goal for your top 30 to 40, and then the goal is to get these other kids in and get and play depth and all that. And I don't envy 9th. You have 60 guys on a football team for 22 spots in a game. That's not an easy thing to do, but I've lived that dream.
You
have,
right?
At 65 one year, and that was a challenge, making sure you get everybody on the field.
It really is, and I appreciate Coach Jerkovich and Coach Mono and all those guys down there that are giving their time to those groups.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about 10th grade and then JV as well.
So we didn't have a JV game this, and like I said, there's this delicate balance right now with how much 10th grade, how much JV, how do we do that? Because that's a lot of game action for a group of kids, and there's a quarter limit, obviously, 6 quarters a week, and you're saying some of these guys we want you to play maybe in 3 different games. So you got to be watching that. But more than that, I told the parents at the parent meeting, it's about health and safety. Just because we can give a kid 6 quarters a week doesn't mean that we should be giving a kid 6 quarters a week. Yep. Maybe 1 week we have to, but does that mean we should be maxing out on quarters every week? I don't think so. That's why we want enough numbers and schedule our games appropriately. Our 10th grade group lost to Andover. I think it was 27-14. Okay. They said they were down a score in the 4th, and then Andover scored late. What I'm realizing is, these other programs, and we film these games, so naturally, what we're doing in 10th and 9th and all that is usually some type of reflection of what your varsity is doing. So
Sure.
we need to make sure that we're doing things in a given week that also prepare our varsity to not give away things, if I want to say that.
Yep.
So.
Yep, for sure.
But happy with it so far. Good numbers. And what I got to do, even when varsity is going on, is I poke around every once in a while and just make sure that we have the tempo that we want, and we're practicing the way that we want, and it's safe, and it's fun, and kids are getting reps. I mean, those are my goals.
Yep, I like the fact that you're doing that. That says a lot about you. So, all right, let's switch gears. Let's talk Waconia. They're coming off of a 7-3 season. They lost in the section semifinal to Chanhassen, and I think this is one of the better teams that they've had in at least recent history. And they opened up last week with a 48-0 win over Rochester Century. What can we expect from the Wildcats?
Well, I'll tell you this: anytime you win 48-0 at any level,
Yep.
you're doing a lot of things well. The first word in watching them that comes out of my mouth is patient. They understand who they are. Defensively, they're not going to give you a whole lot of different looks. They're going to sit in the cover two, and they're going to say, this is who we are. Our kids know in and out what all of their adjustments and little wrinkles are. And they are going to force you to earn your drive. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying they want to give up first downs, but what they don't want to do, my impression is they don't want to give up the big play. They want to keep everything in front of them and say, we'll give you the 4-yarder here, we'll give you the 5-yarder here, but we are not giving you 15 and we are not giving you 85. And I think that's going to be really good for our offense in terms of matchup to say, we're going to take that approach in a way this week and say, can we sustain drives? Same thing I talked about. Can we get our first down?
Right.
And if we do, got to be able to reset it, get our second one. But this team will challenge you to say, can you be patient enough in the way that you call a game to earn your touchdown? Because if you try to grab for too much, they're really, really well spaced out, and they're really good in understanding what their liabilities are. They don't have a lot of them, but they know exactly who they are, and they're going to try to keep you really, really simple. And there's nothing wrong with being simple.
No, that could work
you need
out
to be
well
able
for
to
us.
execute. You got it.
So what will your focus be this week as you prepare for Waconia?
Well, it's always got to, first and foremost, it's got to start with us. How do we pare down? How do we decide to get our best personnel in spots in which they can be successful? It's always going to start. You're going to get sick of hearing me say that. We did not do that at the level we needed to do it last week. We have to get back to saying, what are we best at, and focus on that. And that even comes down to the way we script. I want less plays scripted. I want more reps at the plays that we scripted. And even the way we call a game, I don't mind repeat calls throughout a drive. I don't mind repeat calls throughout a game. I don't mind running the same motions and stuff if they're effective. Yep. And I think I did this throughout many years, even as a coordinator. I feel like I always need to be different and then come back to what I had success on, and then sometimes you just forget about it. Right. And then you look back at the game and go, why didn't we go back to that? So I got to do a better job of that and saying, hey, guys, good call. Let's not forget about it. We need to come back to it sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a question you'll probably get sick of me asking, but what are the one or two things that you need to be working on and accomplish this week on an overall scale? What are those things that you guys are working to get better at?
The cool thing about special teams and defense is they are both very leveraged based. And what I mean by that is no matter where the ball starts, when we're in coverage or when we're on defense, we have clear and set rules for who are the force players. Mm-hmm. The ball's coming at you. You need to out leverage it and send it back to all those guys that are running and hustling. Right. And what we did not do on two special teams plays, one ended up in a touchdown, one completely flipped the field and put our defense in a bad spot, is it's just one set of eyes. I would love to say that, man, special teams wise, we had 11 bad assignments. We didn't. We had 9 really good fits, and we had 2 that did not fit well, and that's all it really takes. And on defense, it's the same thing. We can't be 9 for 11.
Yep.
We have to be. I would love to say we can be. We can't be 9 for 11, otherwise 4 yards turns into 12 or 12 turns into 35. Right. And what we have to get back to is just simply saying, what is my job? And this is what's tough for defense and special teams sometimes. You can do your job and not make the tackle.
All right, and we're back. Hey, sorry about that. We had a little technical difficulties. I didn't have to go do a costume change or anything like that, but camera ran out of juice. So we're back. We'll finish up the interview right now. So, Coach, we were just talking a little bit about the Waconia game, so what are the one or two things that the team needs to accomplish this week to get better as a whole?
Yeah. I'll say this a lot. It's going to come back to us. We have to focus on us, and you always certainly have to look at what's being presented on the other side of the ball. But we've got to get down to the basics of defense, and we spent a lot of time on Monday night doing that, and just saying we need to understand how to force a ball back inside, and we ran really well. Our inside fits were not the issue. We were just not forcing the ball back inside. So starts there. Part of it was simplifying this week. I asked both sides of the ball to really limit what it is we need to do early in the year. It's natural to just feel like you always need this extra thing just in case this comes up. But really what I asked him to say is, how does this team clearly want to win a football game in Waconia? And show me how you're going to be able to take that away. I think every coach will say, don't want to get beat. But if I can get beat, and we get beat because they did it in a way that they didn't want to do it, and we explained earlier how they want to do it, that's one thing. But we need to take away what they're most comfortable with.
Got it. All right, that sounds good. Well, and at the end of the day, I think you just need to line up and play football too, right? You got to simplify it as much as you can and just play the game. So, and hopefully we'll be able to do that on Friday night. So, Coach, thanks for taking a little time to talk cadet football, even over a course of a couple of days here. Good luck on Friday.
Thank you.
So our cadets will play the Waconia Wildcats on Friday evening at WHS Stadium at Waconia High School. Kickoff is scheduled for 7 p.m. It is recommended that you purchase your tickets online in advance, so we'll provide the link below for you. We're still unsure if we're going to be able to broadcast the game from Waconia, but we're going to do our best to do so. If we are able to, you'll find that at cadetbroadcast.com. Again, we'll provide the link below for you. And finally, if you have any questions for Coach Walch or myself, please use the comment box below to do so, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. We'll be back next week to break down the Waconia game and look ahead to rivalry week. Oh boy, I had trouble with that yesterday. Rivalry week number 1 when we play Cretin-Derham Hall. Thanks for watching, and go Cadets.